A lot of people just end up quitting or
Hmm.
moving on to a different job because it is very taxing on not only your soul, but it costs money to be an actor and a
Yes.
model. It's not, you have to invest in yourself. It's a business.
Thank you.
And you
Thank
have to
you.
have a startup money fund that is possibly coming from somewhere else. A lot of people end up living in their car. A lot of people do background work for a living because in the union, it's 350 a day,
Hmm.
$350 a day, and they just do it every day and save up, and then you get an agent, a publicist. There's all these things that come into play that you just don't foresee.
Hmm.
Well, you have to, I mean, you really have to be a multitasker, but you also have to have multiple streams of income to keep your career going. I found that just
Yes.
later in life, obviously, being a model into my 40s, I was like, this is so taxing because you have to, of course, not take the jobs where they basically want you to sell your soul, and you can give up on a lot of really great jobs and great opportunities because a lot of women are willing to do that. A lot of women are willing to, sell those parts of themselves that, somebody with morals and a high ground is not willing to do. So you're like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm going to have multiple streams of income to keep my career going and to be able to be choosy and to be able to pick projects and things that are going to keep me in the light and keep me in a place where I can still go to bed at night and I can still look at myself in the mirror at night. And that's what's so scary and hard, especially with Hollywood. And, I'm like you, whereas, even when I was younger, I was like, oh, they'll fly you to New York and they'll fly you to these places, but you need to be 100 pounds and you need to like, sleep with this photographer. And I'm like, yeah, I like to eat. I'm like there's no way, and I'm never going to sleep with somebody to get to a point where I know I can get there anyway. I know I can do it with hard work. I know I can like dig in and put my heels in and really work for it. And that's why it takes so long. And a lot of people go, "Oh, well, it took you a long time to get here, or it took you a long time to get there." And you've got a great list of accolades for your movies and your TVs. And I'm like, looking at it right now, and it's so exciting, but you see how much work it takes and how
Hmm.
hard you have to really dig in because you have to do it the real way. You have to do the legit way. And that is a lot harder than people think,
Hmm.
without selling your soul and with really, holding on to your moral compass and realizing your value. It takes a lot longer. It takes a tax on your life, but it also takes a lot longer to get to these things where people are like, "Oh, you're already in. You should be getting movies every day." You're like, it doesn't work like that.
So, Caitlin,
It doesn't.
when you came from Pittsburgh, what would you say for yourself when you arrived in LA and just in your journey itself? And we'll break it down into parts. First, the modeling, then the hosting, then the acting. What would you say your biggest challenge was first when you arrived in LA, just stepping in there into a new city, and then second, what would you say in regards to your biggest challenge first as a model?
Oh gosh, when I got back to LA, I really always felt like LA was my home, but I was raised by my grandparents, so I was really excited to be back in Los Angeles, not knowing all of the trials and tribulations that would await me. I was just very naive. But my first job was as the catalog model at UCLA. I went to their open call. I saw it like on the Bruin whatever posting board, and I went
Okay.
for it. And they picked me. I was their catalog girl for the whole year, and that was my first job. And then I worked at Disneyland as Sleeping Beauty. And so I think that was my biggest challenge was getting over my stage fright, getting over I wasn't able to be in a room of more than three people without instant sweat and anxiety. And a lot of actors have that, but when you're trying to, you just have to get out of your shell.
Hmm.
And it was very hard for me. It took a long time, many years.
So, like, obviously you've been balancing between the modeling and acting. What did you find the harder medium between the two, the modeling or the acting?
Modeling is its own career, its own sport, and that came very naturally to me, very easy to me. I don't know if that was just something innate, but I really
Hmm.
enjoy modeling. I enjoy creating photos, knowing my angles, helping a company get the right pictures and the right content. That's a passion of mine. And I've realized that over time, modeling has always come really easy to me. And it's not all just looking good. You have to show up on time. You have to be prepared. You have to have your hair and makeup done properly if they're not doing it for you. You have to have, you have to keep yourself in shape. There's a lot that goes into it that people just think, oh, you show up and you're hot. And
Hmm.
that's not the case. You can't show up hungover
No.
from the night before. You have to keep up everything. It costs a lot of money to look beautiful,
Hmm.
especially in today's
We
age.
actually
I
got
know.
to this conversation before, and this is one of my biggest things about models with longevity is showing up with hair done, nails done, good skin, shaved. You'd be surprised at how many women show up to a set and you're shooting bikinis and they're not shaved, and you're like,
Yeah. People
what?
actually
What?
seriously fucking do that?
Oh my gosh, so often you'd be shocked. But it really is sad because you will see these women who will, take a job for, way underbid all of us, that have been doing it for a long time, and they'll just show up how they show up. They don't care if their, eyebrows are crazy and they don't have makeup on and their hair is a mess, and they've got bad extensions, and it really is a craft in itself just to be ready and just to show up like your picture. And
Hmm.
that alone is like a huge accolade for like a real model, because you can look at pictures all day long on Instagram, and you can look
Hmm.
at pictures all day long in someone's book. I'm like old school. I still have my modeling book and my modeling Z cards. This is old
Hmm.
Me
school.
too.
I think that Caitlin and are pretty close in age. And it's crazy because so many of these women get away with just
Yep.
being their filtered self, and then you
Yep.
meet them and you're like shocked because this is not the person
Hmm.
you've seen and talked to on Instagram or wherever they, maybe portraying their career. And it's such
Yeah.
a huge accolade to a model to be that person who's punctual, who shows up looking exactly like their pictures, who shows up with their hair done, with their makeup done, and actually knows how to show up, do their job, get the shot, and walk off the set. And it should happen within the first like 10 shots. You should
Hmm.
have already gotten it, and they'll always do extra. But that's what's wild is I feel like we're from an age group
Yep.
at probably we're like the dying age
And,
group. Like
but the thing is, you guys ain't dying though, because as I
we
said, I mean,
But we're gonna cry.
yeah,
literally in my office, I have a
but we
picture
really
of both.
are like that last like age group of
Yep.
models who are quite literally show up as real models. We're
Hmm.
tall, we're slender, we show up on time, we show up with our hair done, we show up with our makeup done, we will be there with our nails done, all of these things. And this younger generation of models really just doesn't.
Well,
They
this is the
really,
thing, Amber. This is the thing.
yeah,
You guys use the term in the sense as models, but as I've tried to explain to clients, I'm like, what you guys are brands, not
yeah,
model. Because as a model, you're looking for a job, you're hoping for a job, you're waiting for a job, you're praying for a job, you're wanting a job. But what you guys have done is that you've created a brand because people know you based on your name. Like,
right,
yes, your work is second to none, probably the best in the world, but it's the name that you guys have established, which you understand that when you show up to these sets, yes, you're part of the process,
right.
but it's not about you. It's about the companies that you're working for, and if you make sure that they're happy, then eventually the word spreads. But as you know, a lot of these girls, they come in, they think about themselves, they're focused in the sense, number one, of getting their Instagram photo out there. And it's just like, yo, like there's a lot bigger world than the Instagram
Oh yeah.
aspects. And for you guys who have been doing it for so long, what would you say, and I'll say this to both you, Caitlin, you can go first, is what would you say the difference is from when you started to now, and what would you say your biggest frustrations in the industry are in the sense of change now?
Differences in the industry, definitely companies are only looking for people with their following. The models have to have a following. You might be the best model in the world, but if you don't have a TikTok now, and brands are just looking for that, and I think that they should go back to, looking for a model who's professional, a brand, a girl with a brand who is marketable to their company instead of just following her following, because
Mm-hmm.
it may not translate. And I want to shout out Pop Brothers at Law. What's up, you guys? I see you joined. I think that's my biggest pet peeve is brands not really doing their due diligence to make sure a girl is the whole package, or somebody, the model is just, they have a lot of followers. That's not what you
Right.
want.
So if you were speaking to a brand right now, any brand, doesn't mean you don't have to name one, but if you were to give advice to brands that are out there, companies that are out there, in regards to what you just said, what advice would you give them?
I would go back to the old way of holding an audition for your company. If you're looking for a brand ambassador, a lot of things are done online, and I know COVID has changed a lot of stuff for a lot of people. But I think
Yeah.
just interviewing somebody, making sure they're well spoken, really doing your due diligence into what they've modeled for before. And
Yes.
I didn't always have my shit together. I didn't always show up with my hair done. I was a young model. I was 17 when I started, and I'll be 33 in a few weeks. So I've been doing this a long time, and you learn those things over time. If you don't have people holding you accountable at home, you learn from missed jobs. You learn from making those mistakes. And unfortunately, a lot of models out there make a lot of mistakes and they can't find
Hmm.
work. But over
Yeah.
time, you have to prove yourself and find people who you trust to get jobs for you, or just do everything yourself. And that's what I've had to do, because sometimes agents disappoint, managers disappoint, but you have to show up, and I show up for myself. So just do the work and something
I
good will
love
happen.
that. I was like,
Amber,
wait,
same
you
thing.
are, she is a baby. I'm like, you are a baby. Wait a minute. I'll be 45 this year, so we are not close in age. But
Oh
we
my
still,
gosh.
But you're still both destroying every
that's,
model out there in
this
the
is the thing
industry.
is that we value the same thing in our career, and we value the idea of earning it. And that's what has changed so much, is that there is no real, earning the position and earning the job and earning the spokesperson, position. And that's where companies are really missing out. And they're hoping that this person's followers and, their branding of themselves. But if you look at most of these women who are getting hired on these jobs, their man to woman ratio is like,
Hmm.
or,
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
really appealing to
The
men. And
flat tummy T girls.
right. Well, and I'm saying, these companies, if you're hoping for a broad scope of, people wanting your brand and talking about your brand, if you're going after these women with huge followings, you're probably not going to get a lot of sales. And that's what blows my mind about these companies, that they don't actually understand that this following of, 80% men,
Man.
they're not going to be shopping whatever you're selling. And you
Nope.
should be going back to that old way of, seeing who this person is, if they're actually, a person that will represent your company outside of the internet, because you have to be a brand ambassador wherever you go. And I learned this super young. Like when I would show up to places, even when I became a ring girl for the UFC, I was the UFC. So if I showed up to somewhere, that's who I represent.
Hmm.
And so many of these companies miss that mark by just hiring a girl with a big following. And it's sad because
Hmm.
this is where our, where our modeling industry and where our acting industry has really gone. You see a lot of really poor actors, but they've got a lot of followers.
Hmm.
And you're wondering how this person got this movie. And that's why, sadly, that's why they're getting these movies is, and there's no criteria to actually get the movie. It's like, oh, well, you've got a million followers. Well, a million followers are not going to come to your movie, because I promise you they are not there to see her on what, like, get killed or whatever this girl is doing in the
Hmm.
movie. They like her bikini photos. And that's what's crazy is, you see this more often than not. And just
Yeah.
having the value as a model. I mean, Caitlin is really doing a great job as one of the ones that are still in and still doing the movies and still doing the TV and still doing the actual modeling jobs. Is you're going to find that that's really few and far between that
Yeah.
actually have a head on their shoulders and actually represent the company in such a way that they can speak on the company. I don't know how many models I've met that, they'll take on a jewelry company, or they'll take on and they'll know nothing about the
Nothing
company, and they won't even bother to
to do the
educate
research.
themselves.
Yep.
And you're like, so, tell me about this or that. And they're like, oh yeah, you can just click on the link. I'm like, you don't know anything about the product. You don't
Well,
know anything.
it's like what I call at the expos, like at the fitness expos, like when the booth bitches, where
Right.
it's like buy this like 15% off energy drink. okay, well, what the company do? I don't know. Just take it. It's fucking good. Just try it. And it's just like, and I try to explain to models. I'm like, look, just like you said before, like these girls now, when it comes to the business, they come in, you
Yes.
said, with these massive followings and stuff. But I always try to explain to myself, like, I'll have interviews with girls, and I was like, look, I'll ask you a simple question. I just want a simple answer. If you had a choice right now, being the face, the spokesperson, the cover girl of either one of these brands, and which one would you think would be the most not only beneficial for your career and longevity, but the most financial reward? So I'll say Maxim, Playboy, Swimsuit Illustrated, or Walmart. And I can't tell you the amount of people that will choose Maxim, they'll choose Playboy. And when I sit there and say, well, you know you should be choosing Walmart, they're like, that's old lady shit. I say, okay, understand one thing.
Right.
You can't model forever.
No.
But those girls that you see starting off at 19 years old, who's the target market for Swimsuit Illustrated? Men.
Men.
Who's the
Right.
target for Maxim? Men. Who's the target market for Playboy? Men. But when you look at Walmart, seen in over 300 countries, an international brand, these girls could start working at 19,
Yeah.
then 35, then 55, and still be doing it until they're freaking 60, 70 years old.
Well,
But
you have to be behind a brand that you're actually going to use and that you think represents yourself. Like
mhm,
obviously, you're not going to want to sell it to Walmart if you're working for big brands, you know, if you're working for Cavalli or you're working for Gucci or
mhm,
you're working, but at the end of the day, you like we talked about in our interview, and I'm sure Caitlin knows this, is that like Maxim and Playboy, you can now pay for a cover and have no former experience, and you can be photoshopped to the max and not even be a real model and get the cover. And I think that people are so blown away. They're like, oh, you know, why haven't you had the cover? I'm like, because I won't pay for it. I will not pay to be on the cover. And guess what? These magazines now make a killing off of women's insecurities because they will pay to be on the cover of these magazines, which now means nothing. You know, I remember when I first started modeling, getting a cover of a magazine was like an accolade. Like I have tear sheets and magazines for years, and it was a big deal because I earned those things. But
mhm.
now anyone, literally anyone, can buy a cover of a magazine.
So Caitlin,
And
speak on that. Like for you,
yeah,
like obviously, as Amber said, like the game has changed in regards to social media compared to print. Do you feel that social media now has hurt the business in a way, or do you feel that it's better the business?
It's a double-edged sword. I think that it's definitely helped my career because I was able to grow a following. I've always gone through the back door. Like for Maxim, I got hired on the spot. I was just attending a Maxim party, and the promoter knew I was a TV host and hired me to replace the girl that didn't show up. And that's how I got my job as the Maxim host.
Okay.
And that's been one of my favorite TV hosting jobs of the past 6, 7 years, but I think social media helped me because that person only knew me from social media, knowing that I was hosting. So you get to put your work
Hmm.
out there. You get to show
yeah,
people that you have talent without doing a big job for another company. You're working for yourself. You're putting your talent on display on your own pages, but people can see that. That's a good thing about social media,
Hmm.
but it's all of the trolls and the negative comments. I've blocked thousands of
So
people,
how?
so that's
That's a
hard.
perfect subject. How do you deal with that?
If I see a comment that just even minutely looks negative, I'll block it before I read it. I'll block that person. And a lot of girls say, well, why do you block people? That's just extra eyes on your page. But I don't believe in all of the negativity. And if somebody has the balls to write that on your page, they're not a good person. I don't care if they buy my product.
yeah.
Go on to somebody
Agreed.
else's
I think that's
page.
one of the hardest things is to get to the block button and to get to the delete because really, you know, women are already emotional creatures and I feel like they know when to go after you and it's super hard. I'm sure you've been through it where it's super hard not to read because you're like, oh, we're
It's
so
like
ugly
it's
and
like seeing a car accident on the street. I just I
Oh,
have to see what they say. It's
yeah,
so
it's
wrong.
awful. And you're like,
But who do you guys feel you get when it comes to the negativity on social media? Is it more from women or more from men?
oh,
Oh,
from
leaving
women.
comments,
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
leaving mean
negativity.
comments.
Yeah,
Men,
You
seriously?
get the
guys.
men?
You?
Yes.
Why? Because you know what? You don't respond to their dick pics and like I mean,
I can't even remember the last time that I even accidentally opened a dick pic, you guys. I have blocked so many people. I've blocked
Serious.
all the dick pic givers. They're all blocked. They're gone. Senders, don't send to me.
I now get a lot of the sugar daddies. I get a lot of, will you be my sugar baby? I'm like, is this like this is a real thing? I was like, I love it because I
I
just read
can
them
be
the tea
your
level.
sugar daddy. How about that?
Yep. Like,
so that for
sugar.
both, I mean, for both of you, obviously, I mean, when it comes to social media and dealing with those type, you said type of trolls and the inappropriate comments. But obviously, I mean, me and Amber discussed on this before. Like, how do you feel as a beautiful woman, as a sex symbol, and obviously, as I said, you have just like Amber, you guys balance the scale in the female aspect of the business, also dabbling into per se a more dominant male aspect of certain parts of the business. How do you find your way to not only give yourself the credibility, but to be able to have people respect you in a way as a professional and not just look at the physical aspect of, okay, she's hot, she got big tits, whatever, and be able to go into these meetings and go into these auditions and stuff like that and have someone take you seriously as a